One of the important aspects of a lesson planning is the selection of an appropriate methodology for a certain lesson or language input. A good teacher would select a particular methodology based on his teaching needs or according to the nature of the language item he or she intends to teach in the classroom. Overall, there is no single correct way of teaching English. There have been multiple ways, methods which have been applied so far in various parts of the world for teaching second language or English for that purpose. Therefore, we cannot say that one particular method would be more useful than others. We can assume that a certain method or technique would be more useful while teaching a certain linguistic item, and another method probably would be more useful while making students practice another kind of linguistic inputs. So there are definitely different theories as how to teach in a language classroom, what can be more useful, what can or should be included in a language classroom, and what should be avoided there. For example, I would say that there are some basic ideas which can be performed or are common in a typical communicative methodology classroom. For example, it focuses a lot on the use of mother tongue, and there are diverging views about it. Some people strictly don't like it. They don't want the mother tongue to be included in a classroom, while others would suggest that this might be used while giving certain instructions to the students for doing a certain second language task, or in order to teach them some complex grammatical structures or grammatical items in order to make their life easy and make the grammatical concepts more comprehensible by comparing them to the native languages of the learners. Eliciting is another way of explaining some important concepts. There could be multiple ways for eliciting a certain language point. For example, we could use drawing on a board. We could use pictures, mime a certain thing in order to make students understand. For example, we could use it in things like sports, in everyday activities, etc. We can work backwards from answers to elicit questions. For example, we could make statements. We could use statements like "she is a doctor" on the board in order to elicit what does she do. So there could be various ways of using the elicitation in order to make your language lecture more interesting for the students. Board work has been a traditional way of teaching anything, especially language. In this regard, it may be advised that when you use board instead of saying single language items or words, also try to show the part of speech to which that word belongs. For example, instead of writing simply house, you should write a house in order to show to which grammatical category or parts of the speech that particular word belongs to. Drilling is an opportunity for the learners to practice language in a slightly controlled way. Then pronunciation also involves modeling for new learners of a language, and through pronunciation they know how to speak a certain word in a language. And then organizing student practice is very important, and a good teacher always keeps this in mind. There are many ways to make your students practice a particular language item. For example, there could be an open class activity, open pairs, closed pairs, group work, etc. There could be multiple things which might be introduced here. Then exploiting listening and reading text is very important, and there could be certain sequences which may be followed for this purpose. For example, you might establish a context, introduce some vocabulary items to your students in advance, then you set gist questions, you play the recording or video, or make your students read something, and then you check in pairs and then check their answers in the classroom. Then you might prepare some detailed questions, play that recording again, or make your students read that text again, and then you again check in pairs for the detailed comprehension, and you do that again in the classroom. And this could make your classroom activities of this nature more interesting.